What's up, Internet? You're tuned in to episode 27 of the FlipScreen Games Podcast, a weekly video game podcast where two best buds from different nations come together to discuss the wide world of video games. I'm your host, Pete and Bessie, joined, as always, by my very good friend and co-host, Mr. Steven Ratford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's a good day. It's a good day to talk about NFTs.
I was going to say, it's been a long time coming, this episode. The main topic this week is, of course, the scariest boogeyman in gaming in 2022, NFTs, non-fungible tokens. We're going to talk all about them, what they are, what they mean for gaming, our opinions on them. This has been something that the community has been, especially one member of the community, has been asking for quite some time. So I'm glad we're finally able to have this discussion now that the video game industry has finally slowed down for a week, right? Like we were supposed to talk about this like a month ago, it feels like, but it's been 2022.
Everyone kept buying everyone, so we had to talk about that instead.
Yeah, it's been an eventful couple weeks here. So unfortunately, I'm sure this is not the last time we will talk about this topic because if trends are any indication, everybody is trying to hop on the bandwagon these days. So we'll talk all about that and why that may not be the best thing for the video game industry in just a second here. But before that, let me remind you that this episode of the FlipScreen Games Podcast is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of February. They are, of course, Mary Berry, Christian Oliveria. So funny to me. I'm sorry. Mary Berry, Christian Oliveria, Christopher Valens, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, a.k.a. Asobi, Smokey Shake, Wakahula, and Zaid Ida. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/FlipScreenGames. Y'all are the real, so the real, and we appreciate your support each and every week. Speaking of, if you want to show your support and head over to that there Patreon, there are a bunch of perks and goodies you can get for backing us at whatever level you can. But however you show your support, you'll get access to our Patreon exclusive podcast, One More Thing. So if you want to get an extra episode of the show in your feed every week and hear Steve and I talk about what's going on in our lives outside the world of video games, sometimes a little extra video game conversation too, go check it out. It's a great show. Personally, I think it's the best show we do. So you should go check it out. It's great. It's a great time. Best way to show your support, of course. And you can get a bunch of other cool stuff like access to the archives of our weekly Twitch streams over on twitch.tv/FlipScreenGames. Every Wednesday and Thursday, we are there streaming video games for your viewing pleasure. So if you want to go tune into one of those live, please drop by and say, hey. If you can't, go be a patron and grab those VODs. If you want to get involved in the show and don't have any money to toss our way, that is, of course, no big deal. Head over to flipscreen.games, our website, and get links to our Discord, where we have an always growing community of gamers just like you who you can come and chat with and, write into the show, be a part of our discussions, just like one Olaf did this week, kicking off this whole topic. So you could write in and get a whole episode created about something that you write in and ask about. So why don't you take the challenge? Write in, let us know what you're thinking about the show and what you'd like to hear us talk about on next week's episode. So there are a bunch of ways you can do that. Of course, like I said, the Discord, you can follow us on social media, or you can write into us at questions@flipscreen.games. All of those links are there on the website, flipscreen.games. Go and check it out. So that's enough shilling for now. Let's get into this discussion, right? Like we said from the jump, this whole topic, right? The whole reason this is happening is because one, Olaf from the community wrote in and has asked us about NFTs a couple times, right? And we've been saying, Olaf, we'll get there. We're going to have a whole episode about it. It warrants a larger conversation. And then it's been weeks and weeks of insane news. So I want to start by reading kind of the question that kicked it all off, and then I'll kick to Steve for a little bit of an education lesson. We'll let Professor Steve teach us all about NFTs, okay? So this Olaf wrote in and said, question number 1, will NFTs change the gaming industry from a company's perspective? Number 2, will NFTs change the gaming industry from a player's perspective? The first question, of course, got in my mind because of the story from Team 17. Of course, if you're not familiar, that was the team behind Worms. They'd announced the whole Worms NFT thing. This was news to the development team, and it caused major backlash. And like most companies that try to enter the NFT space these days, they backed off. So Higher-ups hiding plans from the people that made the games that may change the business model they have at the company. Will this be a new trend? And of course, the second question is quite simple. Will it change the game for us as players? Will we actually notice the differences between companies with NFTs and companies without? Will there be a boycott from the games that have tokens in them? Or will we eventually accept it and just play the game for being the game? Will we as players ever just forget about the tokens if they maybe become more common in the future? I want to finally end by saying my personal opinion about NFTs are still... They said F off, but I'm going to just say it. Fuck off with your tokens and spend all the resources you have in the games you make. However, I do wonder if a game you see looks fun, but you know they have NFTs in it, will players actually back off from what is a great game just because of the tokens? And of course, it's absolutely not acceptable that companies hold secrets from the most important people of the company, the creators of the game. And that's something I hope never happens again. The higher-ups may think they can do something without talking to the people in the creative department and walk away with it, but if the creators of the games get angry and may even leave, good luck getting your games out in the future. So, a lot to unpack there, a lot to answer, but like I said, before we get into that, I'm sure there are members of our audience who have heard this term, NFT, tossed around a lot in the last couple months, and maybe don't know what it means, right? Or maybe you understand that it's a non-fungible token. You've seen the stupid pictures of apes and everything on Twitter, but you don't understand kind of the full context.
So Paris Hilton getting one.
Paris Hilton, disappointingly Travis Barker, like all kinds of people all across the celebrity landscape are now hawking this bullshit because guess what? They're investing money in it, and well, we'll talk all about it. That's fine. I'm gonna kick it to Steve now. Break it down for the kids. What is an NFT? What is the blockchain? What is the intent behind it, and how is it actually being used?
Yeah, so as you said, it's a non-fungible token, which is basically just a fancy way of saying a unique token. So it's an asset that couldn't be replaced with something else. So you buy this picture of an ape, and you're the exclusive owner of that picture of that ape, and it could never be replaced with another one. And you have it on the blockchain. The blockchain, which people will mostly be familiar with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and Ethereum and that kind of thing, is essentially just a ledger. It's a public ledger of transactions. So the way Bitcoin and Ethereum work is all of these transactions are happening in the public, the exchange of cryptocurrency, or in this case, smart contracts that an NFT has been minted with, and they're all written down in public. And the reason people have serious environmental concerns about it is because there are thousands of computers all over the world keeping track of it at the exact same time. They're watching for transactions. And that's how you mine for Bitcoin, is you become like a person or a machine that is keeping an eye on these transactions and writing it down in the ledger. So an NFT aims to... Originally, I guess the original concept was to sell digital art. And there was this guy called Beeple, and he sold all of his work as one NFT for like $5 million. It was a crazy amount. It was the biggest transaction for a digital piece of art. And then everyone jumped on board, and it became a way for people to collect artwork. And in order to say that you owned this piece of art, the transaction when you bought it was stored in a smart contract and stored on the blockchain as a ledger entry. You can then exchange that, and you could transfer it to other people, just the same as you would transfer a real life asset. You could sell it, you could trade it, you can just give it away, that kind of thing. The concept, you can really see why it would work for video games. It's a unique asset. You have it for unique items of clothing or cosmetics, things like that in video games, and I think people would quite like it. Why it's a bad idea really is linked directly to cryptocurrency. There's no way to buy these without cryptocurrency, and the environmental concerns behind it. And also, I think people have concerns that it will ruin video games and make them even more riddled with microtransactions. But that's basically it in a nutshell where we are. And there's been a couple of approaches from different companies. So Ubisoft announced their Ubisoft Quartz system, where you would buy an NFT and you could actually use it and have it and wear it within Rainbow Six. Team 17's approach was very much like the artwork approach. It was these are collectible items that you can buy and you just store them in your, I guess, public gallery of NFTs that you own. And so there's two different approaches. Really, the secondary approach is just for raising money. You sell things that video game fans like, and they buy them, and you get a little bit of quick cash. Ubisoft's approach, I guess, is trying to solve a problem that I don't think exists. I think you can do the unique assets and unique items, and companies have been doing this for years. You just got to look at Blizzard with the auction house and being able to sell things in Diablo 3. All of that was possible without the blockchain.
Yeah, I mean, like, the idea of, like, owning an asset, right, is, like, what does that actually mean? Because, like, I think of the application of skins, right, which is, I think, the most common way that it's been talked about. It's like, you could really own your skin. And it's like, okay, but what does that mean? Because if I play Overwatch and I unlock a skin and I can use the skin, I own the skin, right? Like, that's me having a link to...
the promise is that this becomes like an open market, right?
Sure.
That you can take that skin that you bought and you can see it on your Overwatch character, and then you can go over to Fortnite and you can see it there. We're nowhere near that because there's a whole level of technical restrictions that you need to figure out. For starters, not every game's made in the same engine. We know that.
Yeah.
There's Unity, Unreal,
that'll never
in-house
happen.
engines. And why would any development company have incentive to allow you to bring in a skin from another company? They've not made any money from that skin.
Right. Yeah.
So why would they want you to bring it into their game?
I forget his name. Maybe you can look this up while I'm telling the story, Steve. The rapper from Linkin Park, the vocalist who isn't Chester. I forget his name right now. I think it's Mike.
Mike Shinoda.
Mike Shinoda, thank you. He was tweeting about NFTs, and that was one of the examples that I remember he had given of like, oh, you could have a skin and it would work in any game because you own it or whatever. And like a bunch of developers quote tweeted him and like, nah, dog, that's not how that works. And that would never work that way, right? Like that would require a level of cooperation from a lot of companies in a way that just doesn't make sense. Like, I guess theoretically you could do that with like Ubisoft. Like Ubisoft can make it where like the skin you get in.
Yeah, but then at that point, why does it need to be on the blockchain?
Exactly, it doesn't.
And why does it? It doesn't. Yeah. So the only reason you would want the blockchain is to see the transaction happening in public. If you don't trust the company that you're buying it from, I think people really do trust Ubisoft because if you look at the way people spend microtransactions with them, or with like Epic Games with Fortnite, for example, they're more than willing to buy the skin in the promise that they'll be able to continue to use that for the lifetime of the game. Ubisoft could pull that at any point in time if they wanted to, and I'm sure it's within their terms of service that they can remove assets and remove things from the game without any compensation or any recourse for you as a player. I don't see why Ubisoft, within the Ubisoft world of video games, would need that. Does anyone really care about taking their Rainbow Six helmet and using it in Far Cry anyway? I don't really think they do.
It has my name on it, Steve. It's like, so what? Like, yeah, so one of the things that I think is very interesting. I'm sorry, is there any more context you'd like to provide before we start getting into like...
I think that's pretty much it, right?
Yeah,
I think
so.
That kind of explains what the blockchain is and where it works. And at the moment, all of this is happening on the Ethereum or similar, because Ethereum runs on, I think it's ERC32 protocol, and anyone can make their own token if they want to. So I don't know if Ubisoft Quartz runs on Ethereum or if it's their own cryptocurrency. I don't think they've announced how that's going to work. But one thing you can't do is buy it with what's called fiat, which is real life currency. You can't buy it with just US dollars or pounds or euros or whatever. That has to first of all be exchanged into a cryptocurrency, and then that has to be purchased. And every single transaction comes with a transaction fee called gas. And you have to pay for the gas in order for the transaction to happen. And that gas is literally cryptocurrency and the amount that it costs in order for that transaction to go through. It's around about 100 times what the cost of a Visa transaction would be.
What a great deal. So yeah, there's. So I guess I'll start offering some of my opinion, and we can start, getting into that part of it, because I think where I get frustrated, right, by NFTs as a thing, right, is like, before we even get to the application of gaming, is like, I think it's pretty pretty clearly a scam. And I've never actually seen anybody present an argument for a way in which it is not a scam, or a way in which it is not like more or less like a multi-level marketing type thing, because, for example, right, when we're talking about buying and owning a piece of digital art, what does that mean, right? When you own a physical piece of art, right? Say I own an original piece of art that an artist created, that as a piece has value, because it's a physical object that exists in the world, right? And I could put it on the wall, and it could enrich my home, or whatever. And if the artist is successful, right, like, or maybe, develops a career or something like that, it could increase in value, or it could decrease in value, or as people's tastes about art change, it could increase in value or decrease in value. If I take good care of it, it'll maintain value. If I don't, it'll lose value. It's a tangible, limited thing, right? And like any collectible, right? Like Amiibo, for example, right? Like what were the Amiibo that were worth something? It were the ones that there were less of. That if you had one, you were one of the people that has one. That's special, right? That's how scarcity works in a marketplace. When you're talking about an NFT, obviously there's the joke of how many people are like, oh, I screenshotted it, I own it too now, right? Which is an obvious problem with with owning something digital, right? Like a digital copy doesn't have inherent value beyond whatever it is, right? Like the digital.
No, but like I think that can be said of physical objects too, right? You can make a print or a physical copy of a print, and it doesn't have the same value as the original.
But it
And
still
that's
has
what people
some
are saying,
value,
right?
though, right? Like, you're right. It doesn't have the same value, but it still costs whatever it costs to produce and manufacture and get out there. And for you to own that product, it costs money, and you have value by owning that product, right? Like, I have art prints that I've bought, right? Like behind me, you can see, if you're watching on the video, this is a print of a tour poster of a band that I made, or that I like, that they made with an artist who I really like. And I bought that, and was a limited run of 1,000 or whatever. They could print 5,000 more. I would still have the thing I wanted, and I can still put it up in my house and decorate my home with it, right? Like, which was the whole reason I bought it anyway. So that did provide value to me. Could you say that it would have more or less value or whatever if it was an original? Sure. But like, that only matters if you want to get into that side of like art collecting and trading and selling and all that kind of stuff, which is its own thing.
Yeah, that's the same for anything, right? Because it doesn't have to just be art. Think about comic books, for example. I'd imagine owning an original print run of like an early Spider-Man comic, for example. It's going to cost a lot more, and people want it because it's a nice, rare
It's a piece of history.
to have. Yeah.
Right? That's the thing, is you want it because it's like, this is a piece of history that exists, and I tangibly have it. And if I take care of it, I have one of the only ones in the world that's in good shape, is like, that means something, right? And it might not mean something to everybody, but it literally means something. It's observable. Whereas like a digital file, right, is not going to appreciate or depreciate in value unless it becomes hard to come by, right? But like, what is the value of an ugly piece of art that nobody else wants? Like, these wretched ape things, right? Sell them for like thousands and they're ugly for starters. They're not good pieces of art. That's objective, but that's my opinion. I certainly wouldn't pay that much for the quality of art there. But again, right? Like you can make as many copies of it as you want, and it doesn't depreciate anything about it, right? Like that's the whole value of file sharing, right? It's democratizing. It's like, oh yeah, like you can put out a song and make an infinite number of copies in it, and it can make it all around the world.
But legally, only the owner of that song can make copies of that song and distribute them.
but
And so
legally.
if you are
But what does that
if
mean?
you are the owner of the NFT, you can legally make copies and sell it. So you could own that NFT. Say you wanted to make prints of the digital version, you can legally do that because you own the original. Whereas I think what you're saying is people screenshot, they can print it out, they can do what they want. Yeah, they can, but that's no different to me buying a song on iTunes and then just chucking it up on Pirate Bay. I could do that if I want to.
Sure. But that's my point, is like, because you can do that, what protection does the NFT actually offer? Like, in what way does you owning the original actually provide value to you? It doesn't. And the other thing that I think a lot of people don't want to talk about, right, is crypto, right? All of this is based on crypto. How long has crypto...
And that's the problem I have, right?
And how long has
is
crypto
the
been
issue.
around, right? Not long.
2011,
Right.
something like that.
So it's like a decade and change, you know? Crypto is extremely volatile. And the idea that all of these companies are going to be around in another 10 years is pretty laughable, you know? Some of them will almost certainly still be around, right? I don't think crypto's going anywhere. But a lot of the companies that are minting NFTs, right, and establishing this market are startups that could very easily fold. And what happens if somebody forgets to renew on one of their servers and all of these get wiped? And then the link to your NFT, because that's the other thing a lot of people don't know, is what are you actually buying? You're buying a link to an image, and that's the original image on the blockchain, right? If that data gets wiped because Ethereum takes a dip and the company goes under and they don't have the money to renew their server, all of these, you know, this valuable art that you invested in will no longer exist because it's not a tangible physical thing that can be maintained. It just isn't, right? And like, there are ways around that. There are ways that they could evolve that technology. But that's the other thing, is there was an article a few weeks ago with one of the creators of like the tech that all blockchain NFT technology is built on, who said that it was like created during like a 24-hour code jam type thing, and that they had a shortcut to make it work because they couldn't figure out how to actually realize the blockchain in the way that it ideally could work. So the entire framework is built on something that the creator of the code has said is effectively a scam. That's not a great look, you know? And I think like when you get to all of these other issues that come along with it, right? The environmental concerns, like how easily this could all just fall away tomorrow. It looks more and more like a snake oil kind of thing to me, right? Where a lot of people are going to invest a lot of money in this and lose a lot, I think. And the other thing I want to bring up that's, you know, relevant, and then I'll kick it back to you, Steve, is how rampant the theft of art is in minting NFTs. This is a huge problem where a lot of artists have had, you know, their art, their entire catalogs of art stolen so it can be minted and sold as NFTs, and people are illegally profiting off of their art. And there is literally basically no effort I've seen from the folks that orchestrate this technology to limit or curtail that at all. Personally, I have 2 albums that I have produced, right? One with my old band and then one with my current band. And both of those were illegally stolen and minted to make NFTs in the last month.
It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. And there are people minting YouTube channels at the moment. There's a new marketplace where you can buy a YouTube channel, which is just bonkers to me. I have no idea how they think that works. But the art theft, it isn't even just like physical artwork that has been stolen and minted and made to be an NFT. Theft among people that own NFTs is just insane. There was a great article. Casey Newton does a newsletter called Platformer, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But he was talking about how these three people took advantage of an exploit in the blockchain, where if you listed a piece of art for sale and then no one was interested, and you thought the listing expired, and then you listed it again for a different price, people could buy it for the earlier price, the old price, when it was cheaper before people really even knew about NFTs. So people were buying it, and they were buying it for super cheap because they managed to find these listings on the blockchain and then flipping it for a profit instantly. And of course, people can gain access to your wallet and gain access to your crypto and steal all of that. And that's been an issue for years. So the issue with NFTs comes from multiple angles. I think
It's a house
not
of
great at the
cards.
moment.
Yeah. It's a house of cards, and like a stray gust of wind in any direction could topple the entire thing. That's not a stable way to build a market. And the other thing that's worth bringing up is that there is not a lot of interest in this, right? Every time this has come out, right, we've seen, at least in the gaming space, how gamers have reacted, right? And it's pretty much overtly negative almost every time. There was a statistic that was thrown out in something I had read a few weeks ago, where it's like, I believe the number that was quoted was that it's like there's only like a few 100,000 people that own like 80 to 90% of all NFTs that have been created. So it's also not like this thing that a mass number of people are interested in. It's a thing that like a niche community of like people who are, enthusiastic about crypto and that space, right? Those are the folks that are engaged in it. And I'm not to say that those people don't matter or whatever, right? Like, whatever. But like, that's not a statistically large number of people, right? It's not like there are millions of people trying to run out and get into the NFT game. It's like it's a prospector's market, right? It's people who are there thinking that they're going to buy low and sell high, and that this is going to be a way for them to make money. Not that there's this genuine interest among consumers to own digital art in this way, which is, that speaks enough for itself, right? I think that the vast majority of people are not interested in this. It's companies and individuals who are interested in making money. And that gets into the video game side of it, right? It's like, why do companies want in on this? It's because it's about money, right? It's all about money. And so to take it back to Olaf's question, number one, will NFTs change the gaming industry from a company's perspective? If they can, absolutely. Look at the way we've seen these companies talk about NFTs in games and what the value is, right? They talk about play to earn. That's the big term that they're using now, right? Which is essentially this idea that gaming communities built around things like, like Dreams, for example, right, is a game that is totally built around this marketplace of ideas, of people making things for its own sake and contributing to these projects and just to like make something, right?
I think a better example is Roblox. And I don't know if you
Sure.
saw the people make games videos on Roblox, but they essentially have this exact same system in place already. So you can make things in Roblox, you'll get paid for making if it becomes popular because people use their Robux to buy into the game. And then they even have a marketplace that's like NFTs, that's like stock levels. And they did all this without the blockchain because you don't really need it. Where you can buy these unique items for hundreds or thousands of dollars. And because the exchange rate of getting your Robux converted into real money is ridiculous, people just keep their money in the marketplace and they will just buy these items. So any money that they make within the game, they just spend it on the game. And Roblox never lose any money that way. But it's completely unregulated. And it's even more nefarious in Roblox's system because it's targeted at children.
Right. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because the same is true of Minecraft. Like they have like creators in Minecraft who develop things and they can get commission and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's where I was going to drive, right? Is like the goal is to how do we monetize that person, right? How do we monetize the player that makes things for pleasure and be like, well, they have no incentive to do that, right? They've been doing it out of what, joy and fun? They should be doing it to make money. How do we turn gaming into a side hustle? And it's like, No, thank you. That is not.
Do you think that's where most people's objection comes from, though? Because I've not really seen that angle, the whole play to earn thing. Like the Ubisoft Court stuff that was announced, that was very much about buying unique items and
Right.
using them in the game, and it being like, oh, aren't I so cool because I've got enough money in order to buy this special item. And I think that's where the objection comes from gamers more, is that they're worried it's gonna affect the game in a negative way, and it doesn't bring anything of value to the table, really. It's entirely just aesthetics or bragging rights. There's nothing really there that improves or enhances the game. And in fact, in some ways, it could make it worse if everything is related to NFTs. And I think that's really where a lot of gamers, myself included, have reservations with the way NFTs are being pushed by publishers such as Ubisoft.
To me, it's two halves of the same coin. Because I think I agree with everything that you said. I think you're spot on. But I think that the whole desire to push play to earn as a model is the other side of that coin, right? Because now you run the risk of, potentially entire games sprouting up around that, which, is maybe its own thing, right? But it's more, how does that infect the games that you care about, right? And you think about the auction house in Diablo. What happens to a game and its economy if there is a huge segment of the base that plays it religiously to make money, right? How does that change the flow of the game? What does that mean to somebody like me who wants to play casually, who wants to dip in and play for, 50, 60 hours versus 500 to 600, right? Does that make it impossible for me to get the same kind of gear that they have without that level of investment or without spending money? Does it make it impossible, for me to grow through those ranks naturally in a way that's already impossible in some games? Imagine a game like Ark, right? Like one of those kinds of survival games that you need to play all the time, right? If you want to be good at it, if you want to have the best stuff. It's a game that you have to make a part of your gaming diet regularly.
Yeah.
What happens when, a very niche community of hyper, invested people are then dominating that game to mine money, right? To make, it's like the same thing with WoW, right? You'd have those people back in the day that would build up a character and then go sell it on eBay, or they'd sell WoW gold on eBay or whatever, right? And things like that. And it's like, do we want that? Do we want that for gaming? For the purpose to be making money and earning status symbols and,
I think in some instances it can be cool. Like EVE Online, for example, always had this system of Plex passes where in the game, if you ran a business within the game, you would earn these passes, and they could be exchanged for actual game time. So you could essentially play the game for free if you played the game enough.
Right.
And it would keep the most active people interested because they would run the businesses that other people would work for. And it was a very good way of keeping the economy in check. I think if a publisher or a developer implements it in a good way, it can be executed well, but it really depends and has to be done thoughtfully. I think the issue at the moment is a lot of this stuff seems to have been rushed. It's very much like, oh, NFTs are the latest hot new thing. Our investors are probably talking about it on investor calls and asking questions about it and asking, are we going to get into NFTs and how that links in with the metaverse and all of these buzzwords that are popping up. And so they're just like, shit, we really need to get in on this. And so that's why the Ubisoft Quartz thing showed up. That's why Team 17 tried doing their thing with the Worms NFTs. That's why Stalker 2 was going to add NFTs into the game. And it very much is, I think, people exploring as well, especially the smaller developers like the Stalker team, trying to find other ways of financing their games. Team 17, I don't think they had any right or reason to be doing it. And the same with Ubisoft. I don't think, other than trying to make money, quick money, there's no other real reason behind it, I don't think.
And that's the bottom line for me, right? Is even if you take all this stuff that we've discussed, right, and just put it in a box and pretend it doesn't exist, pretend there isn't an environmental impact, pretend that consumers are interested in this, all that stuff, right? Which I think we've already established there's a lot of holes you can poke in this. We had that survey that was done at GDC where the vast majority of game developers do not like NFTs, are not interested in NFTs, and are not interested in cryptocurrency and it being a form of currency that they want to accept in their games, right? So that is enough of a reason to say that it doesn't belong in gaming, right? If the people that make games are not interested in the technology, that's good enough for me, because I've not heard one company come out with a plan for how NFTs or the blockchain can be applied to gaming in a way that makes a game more fun or more engaging. Period.
I've also not heard any plans or reasoning behind why it's necessary. I genuinely haven't heard a reason behind using the blockchain yet. The Ubisoft thing, for example, is exactly what they've been doing, and exactly what Epic Games has been doing, or even Blizzard, way back when with World of Warcraft, has been doing since the very beginning. And in all of those instances, you have to convert real money into another currency that can only be used within that game, and then you buy items that can only be used within that game. That is no different to what Ubisoft Quartz is, except the currency you exchange to, rather than just being an imaginary, what are they called in Fortnite? Fortnite bucks or something?
V-Bucks.
V-Bucks. Rather than being V-Bucks, it's Ubisoft Quartz, and then I spend that Quartz across all of the Ubisoft games on items that I can then use within any other Ubisoft game. At face value, that's a cool idea, right? If you take the blockchain out of it, you take crypto out of it, you take this NFT stuff out of it, you can buy items that can be used in any game. It's a way better value proposition than give us money, you can only use that currency within Fortnite, and you can only buy those items that work within Fortnite. If Ubisoft did it where it's give us money, you convert it to this quartz currency, and you can use that currency in any of our properties. You can use it in Rainbow Six, you could use it in the upcoming Splinter Cell game, you can use it in I don't know, that fucking cycling game they've got. They could do it in anything.
Or like you could use it to like buy games, right? Like what if it was just treated the same way that like your Steam wallet is, right? You put money in, or the Nintendo shop, right? You put money in your wallet and you spend it on whatever, right? Like it whether you buy, currency in this game or if you just buy a game, it's all just money, right?
And I also have no issue with people wanting to sell things either to other players if other players want them. I think a marketplace like that works. Steam has that same system with their collectible things that you can get, and you can buy them if you're trying to complete a set. It's just a collectible item. I think that is absolutely fine. And you can see that happening. Say, for example, in Fortnite, they had the Battle Pass, and you got, at the end of Season 1, a special outfit that will never be added to the store, and it's exclusive. It's an exclusive skin. I'm not going to give a shit about it as a player. And so I'm just like, okay, I'm going to put this up for sale, and other people might be interested in it. You can already do that within Forza. It's not real money that you buy it with, but I can earn a car that's exclusive to like a playlist challenge, and I can put that into the auction house, and people can buy it with in-game currency that I can then buy other cars with that I'm actually interested in. And I think that system works. It's just we already have those systems. Why do we need to bring cryptocurrency and a blockchain into it and just so they destroy our planet? I do not understand it. I mean,
the answer is money.
Every single transaction that happens on the blockchain costs money. It's like $70 to $100 per transaction. Buying the item costs money. Transferring the item to someone costs money. Minting the item originally costs money. I don't understand it. I really cannot comprehend why anyone would do it this way.
And that's the thing, right? Is I haven't heard one argument for why. That isn't coming from somebody who's like talking about fictional ways the technology could be applied in the future, right? The whole, I could buy a skin in Fortnite and then use it in Call of Duty. That's not going to happen. That's not how that will ever work. So no. And beyond that, what is the application that's unique? What is the conversation around it aside from you can own unique items? It's like, that's not necessary. It just isn't, right? Like that doesn't make a game more fun. It doesn't make the experience better. And like, I don't know, there are some people that might care about that, but like, to me, is that status symbol any better than the way that exclusive skins already work? Right? Like, I think about when I was really into Overwatch, right? Their model for making money on skins would be, it's Halloween. There's all these characters are getting a cool Halloween skin, and you can only get it for 2 months, and you got to play every day and buy a bunch of boxes and keep opening those boxes and hope that you get that skin. And if you get the skin, then you have this exclusive status symbol, right? Like, why?
But you couldn't resell that skin then. That's the difference.
That is
right?
the difference. But like,
and you couldn't transfer it to another game, which is the promise or what people think is going to be possible.
But that's the thing.
That's the Ubisoft Quartz promise.
Yeah,
that
and
is
with,
the promise
with
from
Ubisoft, maybe that does materialize. But like, that's the thing is, I don't know. Like, I don't care about that. I don't care about the ability to sell a skin later. Like, that's fine functionality. Like, but you just talked about how that works in Forza already. So again, we come back to what is the unique application of this technology, and there isn't one. Right? Like,
no, I can't see one in gaming. Like, I can see unique applications of the blockchain and where it becomes useful. Like, say, for example, voting, and you want to try and combat voting fraud, and you have an open blockchain which registers every single vote. I could absolutely see that happening. You know that this person with this unique identifier, it doesn't publicly show who you are, voted for this person.
And I also want to say, I don't think that it's impossible for there to be a relevant application of the blockchain for video games. I'm sure someone will come up with one. I'm sure we will see a game.
You just don't think it's NFTs?
No, I don't. I really don't. I think NFTs wholesale, full stop, are a scam. I don't see any way that you can make the technology behind NFTs like provide value. Even if you solved you made it so it had zero environmental impact, you made it so it had backups in place so that these things weren't as vulnerable. Even if you solve all of the problems that make it a scam on its face, I think spending thousands of dollars on a JPEG is insane. Frankly, I think it's an insane thing to do. And I think it's the kind of thing that only someone with money to burn would engage in. That's my opinion. And I don't see any universe where that ends up having an application to video games that actually provides value or makes games more fun or more accessible or anything that has artistic value aside from making a publisher more money. And to me, like, if the only application of something is to make more money, that's not a good reason to include it. That's not, and I get it, right? Like, games are a business. I'm often that person who's like, well, don't forget, corporations hate you and they're not your friend. And the entire reason that video games exist is to create a product and sell it, right? But for us, the player, and for the developers, the artists that make the games, that's not the point, right? The point for a developer is to make a game that is fun to play or that says something, that expresses something to the world, that shares a feeling. It's about creating art that resonates with people, right? And for players, it's about engaging with a piece of art that is fun or that moves you. And for me, like, the more you try to make the purpose of it to make money or have status symbols or to create a marketplace so I can sell things, it's just like, we're getting away from the point. We're getting away from the core of what the art form is about, right? And that's not a good thing. And I think there's a reason that the people that are interested in it are the suits, and the creatives are the ones who don't want anything to do with it. As soon as you have that equation,
you say that, right? But what about people like Troy Baker, for example, who was promoting the VoiceVerse NFT stuff?
I have nothing nice to say about that situation. We've talked about
you're gonna hate or you're gonna create. What'll it be, Pete?
There's no way for me to respond to that without having some choice words for Mr. Baker. I think he came off really poorly in that situation. I think that comment was asinine. And I think he either came into that deal ignorant or just didn't care and thought he'd get away with it and it would be a great way for him to make some money. And that's what I think most people entering the space are, is like, hey, can I survive the bad press around this long enough to make a killing before this becomes dead technology and everyone recognizes it's a scam? That's what I think happened in most of these situations, is people smell blood in the water and they're like, how can I be one of the first people to get here and set up shop and make money?
I also think probably in the case of Troy Baker, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that wasn't what happened. I can imagine he got pitched it as solving a problem and he bought into it without really understanding what the technology was.
Yeah, and that's bad though.
It is really bad. He has since retracted it and said that he's cancelled it, and he apologizes for accusing anyone of hating just by disagreeing with him. So he
backtracking and apologizing is totally the same as not doing it in the first place. Good work.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll say this, right? I'm a big fan of Troy Baker's work, right? I think he's a great voice actor. Go read about his Kickstarter, because he's I don't know. I'm not happy with him these days. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think people like leveraging their star power to hawk this shit to make money is gross. That's my take on it. And yeah, I don't know. Like the fact that every one of these organizations or individuals comes out and has this half-baked, here's this thing I'm doing, and then everyone's like, no, we don't want this. And then they immediately are like, oh, okay, never mind. It's like...
And I genuinely don't know how they didn't read the room. And I can presume it's because all of these deals were already in place, and they're like, we've put thousands or hundreds of thousands, or I don't know how much money they put into these deals, that they're probably at a point where they're just like, we can't cancel this. We have to keep pressing forwards, even though the hate, even from internal studios, like internally at Ubisoft, we saw this week that people were arguing on their internal forums about how bad of an idea this was. I think the quote was, are we trying to go head to head with EA for the most hated publisher? It was
that a direct quote, or was that what I thought that was what Jason said about it?
No, that was a direct quote from one of the developers on their forum internally.
Yeah, you're right. That's hilarious.
And then Ubisoft put out a statement, not like responding to it whatsoever, just shaming the people who made this stuff public to Bloomberg. And it's just like, come on, Ubisoft, you've got to at least acknowledge where we are with this. But I want to take it back to Olaf's second question, like, will it change the industry from a player's perspective? I don't think it will. I don't think this stuff's sticking around. I don't think this is going to change anything whatsoever. I think this dies a death, and a silent death. I'm just hoping and praying that E3 this year, or the Summer Game Fest, or whatever that people put on in the summer, that someone during a presentation says there's no NFTs, because I just need that one thing to happen this year before they fuck off.
The nice thing is, Steve, I think you and I both have a chance to get our predictions about NFTs correct, because my prediction was that you would continue to hear about it for most of the year, and then everybody would finally get the message that nobody fucking wants this, and then they're all just gonna quietly pivot away from it. Because
I think that's probably what's going to happen.
This is something they were talking about on a Kind of Funny show recently, and I'm paraphrasing something that Greg Miller said, so I don't want to take credit for it. But he basically said that this is one of those situations where either in a few months nobody's doing it or everybody's doing it. It's not going to be a thing where like, oh, Ubisoft is doing it, but so-and-so is not. I don't think that's how this is going to play out. I really don't. I think that either we as a culture are going to like reconcile with this and accept that it's a thing and move forward, or it's going to be outright rejected. And it seems like we're leaning more towards outright rejection, because again, I don't think you've seen an example of an NFT that provides value to, Joe Gamer, Jane Gamer, right? Like the average person. The only people who can afford to get into this game and stick around in are people with money to burn. And I mean, look at, I don't know. It's so funny to me to see these companies continue to step on this rake, because it's just like, do you not remember the discourse around loot boxes? Do you not remember the discourse around season passes and all these other things, DLC? And granted,
Oh, Jim, yeah, because the reason EA, I remember, got a load of the hate was the Battlefront 2 thing and the whole play to win situation where you could literally pay to get better weapons within the game, and that was the only way you would be able to beat other people, because if you didn't have as good a weapon as them, what chance do you stand?
right. And granted, all those things still exist. The difference between them and NFTs is that all of those things provide value to the gamer, right? And the problem wasn't with, and you could argue loot boxes don't provide value to the gamer. That's a whole other conversation. I think loot boxes are...
Well, Olaf would be familiar with those because they're illegal in the Netherlands now.
Which makes sense. I've changed my tune on that one. For a long time, I very much was like, I don't see the problem with it. It comes down to consumer choice, blah, 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 blah. But there's quite a bit of...
It's the way it affects children and the way it's unregulated gambling.
Right.
There's a whole other episode of this to be had on loot boxes if you want to.
There is. And there's a lot of research that's coming out to show that that's the case. So, hey, I'm more than happy to admit when I'm wrong about something. But I think when it comes to this, right, like, even with the loot box scenario, if you are engaging with any of those things in a way where it's not where the ratio isn't predatory, it can enhance your experience, right? A season pass in Fortnite is something that makes your engagement with it deeper, right? Like, you're more likely to play the game more, and you're going to unlock all this stuff that will then, you will have these fun, like, oh, look at this fun skin that I unlocked that I can show off to my friends now, or, oh, I got this new, I got this new perk, or, oh, I got this new weapon, or whatever, right? Whatever the path is, it's a carrot, right, to keep you playing the game. And if it's a game that's free to play, well, that's a revenue model, and that's totally legitimate, right? Like, and what is the benefit of that? Well, it removes barriers of entry to the consumer. You can play Fortnite for free because of the Battle Pass system, right? Like, that's how they make their money. But if you don't have the money to buy into that, if you don't care about skins and digital status symbols, then you can just play the game and enjoy the game. And it's free for you, and it's free on every platform. Like, that is value. That does provide value. We wouldn't have the free-to-play model as it exists if it weren't for the ability for you to have season passes or a marketplace where you can buy skins and all that kind of stuff. So I think that model has proven itself, right? Like, we wouldn't have League of Legends. We wouldn't have Fortnite. We wouldn't have these games be as big and as, ubiquitous as they are if they didn't have a reduced barrier to entry. Any person can just pick it up and play it. That's huge. That's huge value, especially if you're somebody who's poor, So with that in mind, or like DLC, right? In general, any of those things, they've shown that people care about them enough to spend money on them and feel like they're getting a good deal.
There was still experimentation. Like, I think back to the horse armor situation.
Sure, but again, right?
People
that was in 2000.
Like, no, fuck this. This is too much, and they learned from it.
Yeah, and that was like 2011, right? Like, we've come a long way since then, and I don't think people would make the same arguments about DLC now that they did back then. And you could make the argument that the same is true for NFTs and the blockchain. I made that argument for the blockchain. I won't make it for NFTs, just because, again, I can't see it. I can't see the application where it's anything that's unique from systems that already exist that don't require you to engage in, the crypto sphere, which has a lot of problems, right? Like, the environmental concerns probably being chief among them. We are, we're in a vulnerable place when it comes to the environment right now, and like, I think throwing the gasoline on that fire to prove you own a JPEG is not smart. It's a waste. It's wasteful. It's wasteful technology. And I think, the question of, like, will it change things from the company, the player perspective, right? To take it back to Olaf's initial question. I think if it's allowed to proliferate, Yeah, and it will in bad ways. But thankfully, it seems that the audience has spoken loud and clear about how they feel about this, and I have to imagine that any company that's thinking about entering this space and hasn't already invested or hasn't already started those plans has to be thinking like it's not worth it, right? Like
I think you give corporations way too much credit. Like we've heard from big players already. Even Nintendo said that they see some possible opportunity in NFTs on their investor relations call, and it's just like, man, I just don't trust people. I just don't trust big corporations when it comes to trying to earn money.
Hey, to be fair, it's not a trust thing. I think it's a matter of look at how this has played out for everybody so far, right? Like Ubisoft is the only major player that's announced it and gone through with it. Like everyone else has made their announcement.
They haven't launched it yet, right? Have they?
Not to my knowledge.
And they took down their announcement video from YouTube. They made it private or unlisted.
Yeah, so maybe they're even pivoting away from it, right? But I don't know. I think I don't think it's that they're going to not get into the space out of the kindness of their hearts or something like that. I think it's that with this kind of negative reaction, like I don't know, like say you're Nintendo, your PlayStation, your Xbox, you're somebody who hasn't entered the space but has maybe considered it. Do you really want to take that risk right now where you invest thousands, maybe millions into, R&D and getting this figured out and announcing it, and then your fan base has a huge fuck you, we don't want this, how could you do this, I'm boycotting your games, this and that, and then you have to backpedal anyway, right? Like it feels like a gamble at this point, which is why I think I don't know. I don't think this is the last announcement of its ilk, right? I think more will come, but I have a hard time seeing a lot of them come to fruition because it's just the vast majority of the market doesn't seem interested. And unless there's enough people where you can have like a whale situation where you can make a ton of money on those small number of people that are willing to engage with it, and the vast majority of folks don't care, unless that's
the situation with microtransaction based free to play games already.
Right.
And I again do not see why blockchain is necessary for any of this. It could easily be done and is already being done by thousands of video games without the need for cryptocurrency or a blockchain which harms the environment.
So with that in mind then, to wrap things up here, how do you feel about that though, right? Like looking at the rest of Olaf's questions, right? The whole thing of like, will there be a boycott on games that do try to implement this technology? Like, will we see people still try to force it out, and will players accept it enough for it to survive? Or do you think that like it just has too much go away heat where just people just don't want to hear about it?
I think it goes away. I think people are already angry, and maybe this is the vocal minority on Twitter that I see, right? It could be the same situation where people are into it and people don't give a shit. The mainstream gamer doesn't care because they buy some Ubisoft quartz is probably the exact same as buying some V-Bucks to them, and why would they care? I don't know. I think it does just go away at some point. The Ubisoft Quartz thing, after I looked into it, is even more nefarious. You have some of the stuff, you have to have 600 hours of playtime in order to be able to even buy some of the NFTs, and it's just like, come on, that's just ridiculous. You're trying to gouge money out of your biggest asset,
most
your players
dedicated
who are
players
with your game every day. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So I don't understand it. I really don't understand it. I never will. But I just go down the season pass or the loot box or the buying cosmetics approach anyway. You already had purchasable cosmetics in Rainbow Six. Why did you have to switch them to NFTs? Nobody understands. Nobody gets it. No one wants it.
And I think that's the bottom line for me is until someone can explain to me a way in which this technology actually makes a game better in any way, in any measurable way, I just can't see the value. And I think as long as the average player feels that way, I just can't see it. I can't see it making the waves it needs to make to stick around. So
especially when you, and especially when you see internal developers at the studios arguing about it on their internal forums and all saying like, what is going on? Like the Team 17 stuff, for example, they put out an FAQ that got passed around when the announcement happened that literally had the FAQ question, I don't ethically believe in NFTs. What does this mean? Does this mean I cannot share my opinion on social media channels after the partnership has been announced? And they weren't allowed to criticize or embarrass Team 17, its contractual partners, or fellow Teamsters in a public forum, and could be cause for disciplinary action.
So the other, excuse me, apologies, still getting over that cold. The other, I guess, final nail in the coffin I'll offer here. What was one of the other stories, Steve, that's been brewing on the surface that we've talked about doing an episode about? It was the current lack of talent in the video game industry. Yeah. If you recall, dear listener, in the last couple weeks, there have been a number of quote-unquote unannounced games that have been announced, right? And
GTA 6, the
new Blizzard survival
Blizzard game.
Right. And if you go and look at any conversation around these quote-unquote announcements of unannounced projects, the conversation is about how the reason that these companies are doing that is because they are interested in hiring people, that they need talent to get these games made. And right now, across any industry, right, there is a worker shortage. And there are a lot of contributing factors to that, one namely being us, being in a global pandemic the last couple of years. And obviously that has put strains on people and on workers in general. But you've also seen a lot of people starting to want to be valued a little bit more at their workplace and to be treated with more respect or to be treated with better pay or better options or more creative freedom. And I think that these publishers probably cannot afford to have workers be this dissatisfied with something like this, right? Because, a lot of people are hiring right now, So why stay at Team 17 where you're not allowed to express your opinion about NFTs, which you were bullied into putting into your game, when you could maybe go get a job at Rockstar or go get a job at Blizzard, which is maybe not the best place to work right now, but hey, we'll see how that turns out. But point being, your options are only better right now than they have been. And I think that
maybe that stops some of these companies doing it, right? If everyone
it's a liability.
Exits and during their exit interview say, I don't like the approach to NFTs, I don't ethically believe in it, and they lose a X percentage of their employees and their developers that way, then maybe that is cause for them to say, you know what, this is enough's enough. On top of the player backlash, we've also got the issue with losing talent and losing developers to other companies that aren't dealing in the NFT space.
Which has already been a problem at Ubisoft, right? Over the last year or so, they've lost a lot of key leaders in the company. So,
well, some of those leaders I think got forced out because of some of the other sexual scandals.
That's true, but even like, and that's worthwhile context, not to diminish that. My point being, even if that is the case, if it's unrelated to this, there's already a talent drain going on at Ubisoft. And if now you have even, 100, even 1,000 more people who are talented game developers who are familiar with your workflow and your studio culture and yada, 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 and you have to replace all those people with new people you need to pay to train and everything, it's like, that's not where you want to be. And if you have your top talent getting poached by other places that are better to work, what does that mean for you and your competition? Your competition is getting stronger while you're struggling to rebuild. Like that's not a good place to be. especially if you have a bad reputation, which Ubisoft increasingly does, right?
Yeah, in competition with EA for the most hated.
I mean,
I'd say they've surpassed EA at this point.
right? I feel like EA has done a really good job of getting heat off of them in the last couple of years, right? They're like, hey, we put out a couple single player games. They're pretty good, right, guys? You love EA again, right?
And we've got 3 more Star Wars games coming.
Mass
Don't you
Effect!
like these? Oh, and
Mass
Apex
Effect's
Legends
coming.
is fucking awesome.
Yo, you guys love Vince, right? Yay, we're pretty cool now, all right? We're pretty cool.
All they've got to do though is just announce an NFT initiative, and all of that good credit comes. Do you know the one company that I could see just destroy any more of their good, like the last thread of good faith they've got is CD Projekt Red saying that NFTs are coming to Cyberpunk 2077.
Oh my God.
And it would just like fucking destroy them. It would be so funny.
Yeah, nail in the coffin on that one. That would be insane. The funny thing is, I think all EA has to do is not do that, and they can start getting away from that reputation.
Yeah, right. They can just ride the wave.
All they have to do is be quiet, right? Is say nothing about it.
No. They do the announcement at EA Play, and there is no NFTs. We're not doing it. We're not getting into it.
Oh man, that would actually be hilarious if they were just like, yo, like, no, we're cool, all right? Imagine they come to EA Play and they're like, okay, here's a teaser for Mass Effect. We're going to talk about Dragon Age. We're going to talk about the Dead Space revival. We're going to talk about our next Star Wars, 3 Star Wars games that are all single player. And we hate NFTs. We don't fuck with NFTs. Like, they could.
I mean, that's a way to get developers in at the very least, right? You publicly denounce NFTs, and developers who are sick of it at all of these other companies that are getting into that space go, they got some new Star Wars games in the works. Oh, I really like Dead Space. I'm going to go and apply for a job at EA.
Always wanted to work on Mass Effect.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's like almost like the PlayStation. Remember that video that PlayStation put out about here's how you share your games on PlayStation 4? It would be that equivalent, right? If they're just like,
I love that.
Oh yeah, no, we're cool. Fuck Ubisoft. Fuck Activision. We're a cool publisher now. You like EA again.
Another like other players I think could completely ruin this, right? Is if the console makers, the platform owners say, no NFTs, no crypto on our platform.
God, I would love that.
Xbox was like, no NFTs, no crypto. Same deal with PlayStation. If that happened, I think Ubisoft Quartz is dead in the water. If it only works on PC, no one's going to be interested.
Yeah. I don't think they will, because I feel like it would be too much of a... Like, it could damage that relationship, and I'm sure they don't want to do that.
Yeah, like you've got Ubisoft Plus coming in, and you're taking 30% of those subscriptions.
Yeah. That would be hilarious, though. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, I think Phil Spencer has publicly said that he doesn't see any value in what NFTs are right now.
Right. Because there isn't any. Anyway. Yeah, I think... I hope this was an interesting conversation. This is an episode that I think there are some people who it will very much appeal to, and some people who are probably sick of hearing about NFTs. So that's why we wanted to do an episode about it. Hopefully this will be kind of our statement on it until there's, a major development. So I hope this was interesting. I hope this was illuminating for some of you, and, for those of you who were more familiar, I hope you at least enjoyed the discussion. I think it's something that hopefully is a passing, craze in the industry, and not something that we'll have to contend with for years to come, because it's certainly not something I want to talk about for years to come. So I appreciate Olaf. Thanks for writing in. Thanks for getting behind this topic, because I think it's one that I'm glad we were able to dive into a little bit. I definitely learned some things during this conversation, so hopefully you did too. Steve, any closing thoughts here?
Yeah, I would just echo what's already been said, that I just don't see a future for this going forwards, and hopefully this is one of the last times we talk about it until like the end of the year when we do our recap where both of our predictions come true.
Speaking of which, we'll have to do one of those pretty soon, I would imagine. We've had updates on several of our predictions, so we'll have to do a check-in on that one of these weeks. So, yeah, definitely look forward to that. So yeah, thank you again, everybody who participated in this episode. And remember, if you want to write in with your own questions, you could inspire a talking point here on the FlipScreen Games podcast, just like Olaf did. So remember to come and write in, engage with the show, however you choose to. There are a bunch of ways to do it. Head over to flipscreen.games to our website and get links to all of the places you can find us all over the web. However you choose to engage, we appreciate you for being here. There are a lot of ways that you could choose to spend your time on that there internet, and we appreciate that you choose to spend it with us. So remember, go and check out all the places we are, right? We've got Nintendo Noise. We've got our streams on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We're doing all kinds of good content for you these days. So I hope you're checking it out and enjoying it. Until next time, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We've been FlipScreen. We'll catch you next week.